Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. Oh man, my camera is like way off here. I'm sorry. I recorded, but I didn't like completely set everything back up correctly, so I have to do that in a little bit. But hey, it is July 3rd. Tomorrow is a holiday. One of my favorite holidays. Normally today would be like a ghost town. We do have an early end, I believe. But we also have some PMI numbers today, so that's going to make this a really weird session. Also, we are getting a decent amount of movement in the treasuries this morning. But we'll go over here and look at the charts. So you can see here, treasuries, pretty limited since Friday, but a decent amount of movement on the open here. S&P 500, kind of a similar thing, just kind of in range. Now, oil is moving. There was a joint statement by, I believe it was like the Saudis and the Russians about cuts or something like that. So that is moving. Natural gas, not really reacting too much. Silver and gold recovered on Friday. They're still down in the dumps though, right? Kappa recovering a little bit from last week's down action. Bitcoin getting hammered. So this is where I think it's funny is like all of this was because, hey, they're trying to get Bitcoin ETFs, right? And then they said, no, there's probably not going to be a Bitcoin ETF. And it's sold off, but like it's recovered. By the way, MSTR, Mr. Saylor, has been buying through this whole thing. So really what has happened here is buyers have bought, they are trapped. It's not continuing to go their way. So if this gets wiped out, man, it's going to be ugly. But so far, they remain strong. Oh yes, and the dollar continues to be strong, but just a little bit of a move this morning. 102.65. All right, so over here. Actually, you know what? Maybe we're okay with where we're at. Just move it a little bit over that way. I think we can leave it alone like that for a while. I didn't put my little cage back on it because that was causing problems. Also, I should also That's maybe a little bit better. There we go. I'm okay with that. Good morning, Walter. Well, I was thinking maybe I would do some programming here, but I don't know if I really want to do that on screen here. I might do it on I might do it off screen is what I'll do. And let this keep going, because I mean, there does appear to be trade coming through, right? All right. Well, let's come over to Twitter. Oh man, which I totally forgot about, by the way. Twitter has gone into like you can only view so many tweets a day or something like that. Let's see here. More platform instability could be in Twitter's near future. In 2018, Twitter signed a $1 billion contract with Google to host some of its services on the company's Google Cloud servers. Twitter recently refused to pay the search giant ahead of the contract's June 30th renewal date. Twitter is reportedly rushing to move as many services off of Google's infrastructure before the contract expires, but the effort is running behind schedule, putting some tools, including Smite, a platform the company acquired in 2018, to bolster its moderation capabilities, in danger of going offline. There has definitely been some problems with Twitter. How serious it is, who knows? I'm running low on storage space again. I thought I cleaned that up. I don't know, it's... Oh yeah, because I put some video over. That's probably why. Maybe I just can't have some of these games on here, man. Need to put them on a different disc. What do you mean I'll be fine after the riots in France and Belgium stop? You saying you're not fine right now? Oh, it will be fine. What, the market will be fine? The what will be? Oh, you think Twitter will be fine? Well, so one of the things was that oh man, it's gotta be Soul Calibur. Hold on. So Zero Hedge had a story suggesting that the reason Twitter was having problems and the reason that they were, well, maybe not even so much the reason that they're having problems, but the reason that they were implementing rate limiting was because of like AI scrapers that like OpenAI, after they did that, said, oh, this certain feature isn't working because of Twitter. So I don't know if it has anything to do with the riots in France, but the French, I tell you what, this whole thing is crazy to me. not that there are, okay, like here's the thing, guys. I'm gonna call it minority riots. That's not intended to like disparage the people that are rioting or anything like that. I'm just trying to, you know, give you a historical perspective. It is not uncommon for, you know, different minority groups, whether those minority groups are ethnic groups or they are disadvantaged economic groups, or whatever the deal is. It's not uncommon for there to be riots and or like full on revolutions because you know, among those groups. Okay, what is unique that we see in Western society today, both in the George Floyd riots and what I think we are seeing over in France, is the people in power kind of like encouraging the riots. Right. And that's what's going on in France right now, is like the country is burning and the state is not doing anything about it. Don't want to upset them further. Dude, okay, so you're just gonna get me. I'm feeling ADHD this morning. No, I'm not. See, I'm actually probably pretty geared in because I'm immediately like, I don't know if I want to go into this segue. We're gonna go into this segue. Okay, so one of the big narratives that people are interested in right now, movies. There's a lot of blockbuster movies, and most of the ones this summer so far have been duds. Okay. Everybody complaining or concerned about how poorly The Flash did, and it was like, I thought that movie was like a sacrificial lamb, and that you already knew it was going to fail because everybody hates Ezra Miller. Okay, whatever. I don't think that one means too much. Indiana Jones, that one also, it's kind of like, well, I mean, there's controversy with it, right? There's been people like been egging for this movie to fail for years now, so it doesn't surprise me that nobody went and watched the Indiana Jones movie. The one that really kind of is like, okay, so is this like a continuing thing or what, is the Barbie movie and Oppenheimer. I see so many people on the internet talking about how well the Barbie movie is going to do when we don't know a thing about it yet. What is with that? It's got to be marketing. It's got to be marketing. Well, some people will say that the reason that these movies haven't been doing very well is because of woke stuff. I don't know if there's woke stuff in Barbie, but there is a movie on Netflix that a lot of people are saying is really good. It's called Pneumonia. It makes me want to say pneumonia. Anyways, I wouldn't call it a woke movie, but it is left-leaning. I would consider it a transgender message, because in the movie, I know I'm walking on eggshells here. In the movie, the main character is openly gay. Okay. And nobody seems to have a problem with it, right? But then there's this other character that is like the big bad evil of their society, except for that the gay guy doesn't know it. Okay. So that to me is that character is supposed to be transgender in the minds of the creator, I think, right? And the whole story is basically, it turns out that their entire society is based on a lie that they vanquished this monster, and the monster is actually this transgender girl, whatever, right? And then she gets really upset at the end because everybody hates her. So she decides to attack the city so that she can get to the center and kill herself. But then the gay guy stops her. So it's very much playing into this narrative that you get among transgender people that are like, you better be nice to us or something bad will happen. Kind of what it seems like to me. Is that movie actually going to do well? I don't know. I've kind of felt like it was a good movie, generally speaking. It was better than most of the other animated movies I've seen lately, at least. So anyways, it's this kind of narrative, I think, that if these people are rioting and upset, it's our fault because we weren't accepting enough to them. I think that's total bullshit. I think that's absolute, what's going on in France, absolute bullshit. Okay? This kid, he was running away from the police, man. It's kind of crazy to me that they're rioting over it, okay? What do you expect to happen? Gosh. Right? And then they riot? No, it's because, as far as I understand, it's because they want an Islamic caliphate. I mean, it seems to me that if you allow too many people into your country that have an Islamic caliphate, you shouldn't be surprised when they try and revolt and overthrow your country to install an Islamic caliphate. Am I wrong? Is that going to get me banned from YouTube saying that? Because it just seems like common sense to me. I mean, of course, we shouldn't like unnecessarily marginalize and disparage people, okay? But if that person is, you know, going to turn into a giant black monster and destroy half of the city, maybe there's a reason to be concerned about, like, you know, and just. Okay, what happened in France? So what happened in France was there was an Algerian kid, and he was stopped by police and ran away, and they shot him, basically. And so now all of the Algerian youth in the country, because that's where the majority of the immigrants are coming from, is my understanding, are starting fires everywhere. They're attacking white people and all this other kind of crazy stuff. Emotional blackmail is the foundation of all identity-based politics. Well, yeah, I think that the issue really comes down to is, and see, nobody wants to actually have this discussion. Is what irks me about it. Is like, okay, humans have evolved, quote unquote, bullying. It is a part of society because bullying to some extent eliminates undesirable behavior that could potentially be harmful to the tribe, right? But this is a case where maybe a useful tactic that society has evolved kind of like goes out of control. And so you get everybody feels bullied about something that is unnecessary, right? Like, okay, so I wore something different today. Is that really going to cause the downfall of society? Probably not. And so that kind of gets overblown, right? And so there's always been this message, this archetypal story, which is somebody's different, they're ostracized, and then they end up being a benefit to society. And people learn that you should be more accepting. Okay, good message, great message, and that's the story. You know, like Nimona, it's a common story. There's been many movies made that are kind of along these lines, right? But the problem is that some behaviors are actually harmful to the society, and the question is, at what point does it become enough of a problem that you really do want that particular behavior to be marginalized, right? Well, the argument that some people are making, I'm not necessarily trying to make this argument myself, but I'm just saying that's really where the discussion is, does encouraging children to castrate themselves, is that a harmful thing to society? That's really what it comes down to. Is it harmful to our society to allow a large number of people in that do not share our values? Right? And on the first one, I mean, it's kind of a question that I think we just kind of have to see play out, because I suspect that a lot of what's going on that front is kind of like a mass hysteria trend, and that it will normalize, and then people will figure out a way that everybody can live harmoniously, so that you don't have to ostracize people, but that we're also not weakening society and putting people with poor mental and emotional health at risk and things like that. Okay. But on the one of you allow too many people into your country that don't share your values, I think that is harmful to your society. I think that you have to be really careful about who you allow into your country. I'd be really careful about who I allow into my house. Aren't people, careful about who they allow into their house? Especially if it was like you're going to allow them into your house to like live with you permanently, Like when you make a decision like what Europe is doing about immigration, you're making a decision to live with something that you're going to live with for the next hundreds of years, right? And because if this group of people really want an Islamic caliphate, and it's unclear to me what percentage of them actually do, okay? And I think that a lot of liberals would say, well, over the years they'll give up on that. I don't think so. People go religion, family, government, right? Or religion, family, country. I don't think that they're going to change religion. And the politicians will absolutely, like, the thing that's frightening about it to me is that politicians will push this stuff, in my opinion, not because they're empathetic, but because it objectively benefits them. Right? They're willing to there are politicians that are completely willing to disregard the safety of everybody else if it results in more power for themselves. Right. Well, I don't think so. The argument that I'm making, I don't think that it's remotely close to the same thing in the US with Mexicans, okay? Because Mexicans very much share many of the same values that Americans do. Absolutely they do. I'm totally down with Mexicans coming over, but my only concern is how many people you should actually allow in, because there is like an optimal number of immigrants that for labor and the economy and things like that is optimal. Okay, I don't think it's the same thing that's as what's going on in Europe. Mexicans in particular know how to work hard. Their parents work hard, but they don't want their children to do the same. Well, okay, so here's another thing. I don't necessarily want my children to work hard. I would like my children to have a good work ethic, but my hope is that they are smart and that they do work that is both fulfilling and valuable to society, so that they don't have to work hard, right? Like really, really in our society, like really, really working hard, quote unquote, is kind of a sign that you're maybe screwed up somewhere and you're not doing the optimal thing, because everything's about, the economy doesn't reward you based on how hard you work. The economy rewards you based on how valuable it is to the market. People don't really grasp how hard it is, even for someone with the means, to leave one Western nation for another, allowing economic migrants from the third world to just walk in as de facto importation. Oh yeah, totally. Because there are a lot of people on the left that are like, oh, Europe is so much better. We would love to live in Europe. So why don't they all go there? Because it's actually kind of hard. It's actually kind of hard to go and be an immigrant. Like if I all of the sudden decided that I wanted to live in France permanently, I would have to find a company to hire me and bring me over, probably, right? But that's not the thing. The thing is, like, we're going on empathy, right? An empathetic person will see people's homes and schools and so forth being burned down, and feel empathy for those people who are the victims of that rioting, right? And say, oh, hey, maybe I made a mistake when I said let's bring in tons of people because it's not so great in their country, even though they have some beliefs that are fundamentally incompatible with our Western society, right? I would think that an empathetic person would kind of realize that, but that's not what's going on. And that's why I say, they just kind of stand there and don't do anything or encourage it. That's why I say it's because they want power. Westerners love Japan, for example. A million weebs would leave right now if they could, but Japan doesn't allow that. Well, so the rules in Japan are actually changing. So I don't know. But I don't know that I'm feeling a little ADHD. I kind of feel like I've lost the plot. What was the point? Well, the point is when you have people come in and riot and basically have like a pseudo revolution, and the state sits by and does nothing. What are they teaching people? Because I'm going to bet that in France, that after a few weeks that this kind of all blows over and everybody forgets about it, right? But the problem is that the damage has already been done. Because anybody that's sitting out there that wants to try and undermine the country, right? The message that they just got is that you can go and do anything that you want and the government is not going to come in and stop you. That's what they just did. Yeah, I was just talking about Japan in particular. Japan is kind of saying, actually, we need more people. and they are modifying their laws to be less strict. Because Japan is probably one of the strictest on those sorts of things. Like, even if you do immigrate and get a green card and everything like that, the society is not very accommodating to you. You know what? This is actually something that I find very, very fascinating about Japan, is that if you go to a place and you to be served, and there will be places that will say no foreigners, right? And you think, well, that's xenophobic, and why is that so awful? And maybe it is like covert racism, xenophobia, or whatever. But the Japanese people would say, well, like, I don't speak English. I don't understand English customs. How could I be a good host to an American English speaker, for instance? And that's why they don't want foreigners. Is that they don't feel like that they would be able to be a good host to them. I find that really interesting. I kind of wish that in the United States that we continued to have a culture that prized, you know, a high level of service, because I don't feel like we do anymore. I feel like almost everywhere you go that everybody's trying to give the minimum possible. You know, there's not very many people that take pride in hospitality in the United States anymore. My town, some made small fortunes off them, but most suffered. The town was destroyed in so many ways. Yeah, why is it that everything keeps going towards you give more money to the people at the top? Yeah. See, like the thing that bothers me is that the technologies and discoveries that we are making should create more economic opportunity and should be creating more equality in our society, and they don't appear to be doing so, right? Yeah, in Japan, some restaurants don't allow it. Yeah, they'll just say on the restaurant. But that's what I was saying. That's what they'll say. But then it's kind of like, yes, but if you come in and prove that you speak fluent Japanese and all of these things, they'll still say no. So. Like that's kind of the dirty little secret behind all of these discussions around race, diversity, and inclusion, is that white people are the least racist people on the on the planet, rather. I was about to say the internet. They are. Like if you just go off of the metric, how comfortable would you be with people moving next door to you that do not look like you, right? And Americans are the most likely to say that they're totally okay with that. And Asians, particularly Indians, are like from India, are the least likely to say that they'd be okay with that. Do they really still have places in the UK that say Irish not allowed? That can't be for real. Surely that's not allowed anymore. But you have guys have guns. Well, yeah. So that's another crazy thing about these riots in France is how many like straight up like a lot of people are saying. Like the conspiracy theorists are coming out and saying that these kids are being armed by, like NGOs or something that want to undermine Western society. Because where are they getting all of these guns from? It's insane. Like there's just kids walking down the street with full automatic rifles shooting into the air. It's nuts. It's not racial and ethnic diversity, it's multiculturalism. And you have to define that and explain. I don't think that that's I don't think that it's bad or harmful necessarily to have several distinct cultural or ethnic groups within a society. What I think is bad is to have cultural or ethnic groups within that society who have values that are diametrically opposed to the values upon which the country was founded on. That's me, right? If the United States was founded on free speech, if there is a group of people, whether for their ethnic or religious beliefs, do not believe in freedom of speech, I don't want them coming here. Guns are common in drug dealer circles in France. Yeah. I mean, because over here in the United States, man, anytime the gun control thing comes up, everybody is like, well, look, it's working out so great in Europe and in Australia. And then this France thing comes along and you're like, oh yeah, they're totally doing a great job, right? Clearly, the people that want guns to do nefarious things are able to get them. I think claims of racism is more a cultural thing. Well, no, I mean, I don't know. The thing is that people are prone to be racist, right? Racism is a logical fallacy that is kind of ingrained into the way that our minds think. Because our minds are very, very good at thinking about like normal distributions, okay? Because especially when you're hunting and you're trying to predict the seasons, those sorts of things are really useful to predict those things. And so our brain is entirely based on that. And our brain is not very good at dealing with fat-tailed distributions and some of these other kind of strange statistical anomalies. So, for instance, when it comes down to IQ, for instance, right, there is, if you look at average IQs, there is differences between different countries and different racial groups and things like that, right? The problem is that the statistics are as such that the statistics that you get about the general population are completely useless in terms of predicting anything about an individual, right? And so that's where the fallacy with racism comes in, is that you say, okay, so this person is like this, then they're going to be like this average person of this group. But the differences within the groups are so wide that it really doesn't work that way, right? So racism is an inbuilt logical fallacy. And there have been studies a lot, one of the things that people on the left love to say is that like children are not born racist, that they're taught it. That's bullshit. The kids as old as like 6 months old show in-group preferences, right? It is ingrained into us, and being accepting is a sign of a society that's very sophisticated and advanced, that they've been able to find out through advanced math and so forth that those kinds of general rules don't work and are actually harmful to your progress as a group, right? The problem is that if you import, large percentages of your population, like, okay, like there's only 300 million people in the United States, right? It's a big number, but it's only 300 million, okay? And if you import 3 million people, that's a change of 1%, right? And then when those are concentrated in areas, that's going to affect an area. And if all of those people have a certain belief or something, right? It's going to change that area in a way that might be detrimental to the country. Now, in the case of illegal immigration in the United States. I think it's okay, other than the possible negative economic consequences of allowing too many people in, and the crime and all of the other problems. Like, it's just a humanitarian disaster, man, on the southern border. Okay, right? But in Europe, you're importing large swaths of people, like replacing your population with a group of people that believe something that is fundamentally opposed to the very heart of Western democracies. And nobody sees a problem with that. What? I mean, and here's the other thing, is it's kind of a, what is the word? Is it intractable? Yeah, I'm going to say it is a very intractable problem, because it's not okay to come in and say, well, we're not going to allow any immigration from Syria, for instance. I think that would be inappropriate to say we're not going to allow any immigrants in from Syria. Okay. I think it would be inappropriate to say we're not going to allow in anybody that's Muslim. Okay, that would also be improper. Now, there are some countries that there are problems with, and especially there's like problems with their record systems and so forth, so that you can't properly vet people. That was one of the arguments that Trump was making. You could bar immigration from certain countries, sure. Okay, but how do you ensure how do you ensure a certain ideology among your immigrants? There's not really an effective way to do it, is there? Because you could come in and say, well, okay, we won't allow you to immigrate in here unless you believe in this value, and this value. Okay, then they'll just lie, right? So what do you do? There's not really a proper way to do this without doing something that's probably wrong in some respect. So I understand why they have problems. Good grief. They would do things that would be absolutely forbidden in their previous country? Maybe. Well, right. And I, again, the point that I come back to is, you have a group of kids that are practically enacting a revolution of sorts, right? And the government doesn't do anything to stop it. Or like in Seattle, where we had a group of people literally take over the center of a major U.S. city and declare themselves like an independent country, essentially. And the city allows that to go on for like months until like people started getting killed and so forth before they did something about it, right? What message are you sending? That's like, please overthrow me. That's what that's saying, right? Like, it might be an intractable problem. You need immigration. There's a certain amount of immigration that should be allowed. And some of the immigrants may not be the type of people that you want, but there's not really any way for you to ensure that. And so you just kind of have to deal with the good and the bad, right? But when the bad people come in and do bad things, and then you just kind of sit by and watch, that's when it's gonna destroy your country, right? And Macron is literally just like twiddling his fingers and like trying to ignore it. He literally came in and said, "Oh, well, the problem is all of you people on social, the social media companies allowing the videos of this stuff to be distributed." So it's not that people rioting in the streets and you not doing anything about it. It's that people can see what's going on on Facebook. What the actual, like, that is so nuts. How is this guy? You know what? People have been complaining about U.S. leadership for a long time, Like, people generally liked Bill Clinton, but like every president since then, I don't think that the American public has had too much confidence in, George Bush was viewed as an idiot. Barack Obama, I guess there was some good and some bad, but some people did respect him, but he also did a lot of things that people felt like made the United States look weak. And then a lot of people thought that Donald Trump made the United States look stupid, right? So they say that the United States has had weak leadership, but you know what? The whole Western world has. Okay, like Macron and Trudeau in particular are just like embarrassing leaders. Just embarrassing leaders. This whole thing with the French president, I just said his name so I'm already forgetting it. He was like giving a presentation, or he was talking about something to do with the poor and stuff like that, and he was holding like a $100,000 watch or something, and so he realizes that and tries to hide it. Like, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Trudeau coming in and like basically cutting off a large group of people from the financial system because they were protesting the government. Embarrassing. You're seeing a little bit of that in the UK, although it's a little bit more isolated, but it's still okay. And the leadership in the UK has been a disaster, right? Like, they keep going through prime minister after prime minister over there, right? Like, the reality is that Angela Merkel was like the last strong leader in the Western democracies, and she made a lot of bad decisions. So when I was young, I came across a textbook literally 6 inches. Well, but again, okay, there's kind of a problem here with you got to realize that there's a problem with IQ. Okay, so first of all, there is a serious question as to how useful or effective IQ really is as a measure of intelligence. Okay, like, that doesn't mean that we have like a better metric or anything, but there are like some fundamental flaws with IQ, and there are some fundamental flaws with the statistics of IQ, especially the statistics on IQ that people are regularly and popularly told. So why would you have a hard time finding a book these days about IQ, especially if it has to do with race? Well, yes, one is because they don't want to talk about that, but two is because it's useless. It's useless. The average IQ of an ethnic race has no practical usefulness at all. Why? Because the differences within the groups are greater than the differences between the groups. So it makes it useless for any kind of, policy decision, prediction. It's a useless statistic. A statistic isn't necessarily like the statistic itself isn't false, right? And you'll tend to find that the average IQs in a group across decades is relatively stable, but it doesn't help you make any real decisions. That's why you won't see it. It's because the statistics guys came in and told, helped us understand why it's useless. The French far right. Well, it's a running meme among the far right. It is, right? I got to tell you, man, it is the most frustrating thing to me, and why I am so fed up with politics, is that I can see people on the left doing really stupid things that it's just like common sense that you shouldn't be allowing these things, right? Like it just seems like common sense to me that you don't allow a large rebellion, to just like constantly go on. It seems like common sense to me that you need to enforce the law, okay? Because under these Democrat regimes, especially in some of the cities in the United States, these cities have just been decimated because they just allow the crime to go rampant. They think that the problem is the enforcement of the crime enforcement against crime. They think that's the problem, and so they say we need to have less enforcement. And you have less enforcement, and what happens? It destroys your communities, right? It should just be common sense. They don't get it. They don't get it at all. It's just like insane, right? Okay. So then you look over at these people on the right, and they kind of understand that particular thing, right? But then they have all of these other crazy beliefs that are just absolutely stupid. Like especially the people on the very far right, their entire ideology is based on a bunch of logical fallacies and lies. Especially when you get into like the real far right, like the Nazi types, right? That are like anti-Jew everything and all that sort of thing. It's just like, oh my gosh, like that's the only opposition that we have. Yeah, I find it frustrating. We need to have we on the right need to have political movements and leaders that are actually reasonable and are based on facts and reason. Because if we had that, then they would just absolutely demolish the left. I mean, like right now they're doing a pretty good job, and the left is not doing very well right now politically in the United States, right? Even with all of the craziness, the right is kind of like right up there. They're still competitive, right? If they were actually smart about it, they would just dominate. But Vivek Ramaswamy will have a decent showing in the debates. So Vivek Ramaswamy is kind of funny. He's like a liberal conservative, right? Because basically his whole argument is, hey, look, I have all of these smart solutions to all of these problems. Listen, when you get a politician like that, you can be scared of those politicians, man. Okay, that guy that has a solution for everything. Ooh, those are the most dangerous ones, man. Is order flow trading good for scalping stocks? Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I don't have a whole lot of data to back this up, but just like my own experience going in and trading, looking at order flow on stocks myself and so forth, there appears to be considerable untapped edge within stocks on order flow. So order flow on futures, it's useful. I mean, you still want to have it as a part of your trading, but trying to make money purely off of like the order flow and some sort of a setup that you can find in the order flow, going to be pretty hard to do, because futures instruments are pretty efficient in that respect. But because the level 2 is not widely available among stocks, there still appears to be a considerable amount of edge over there. So I would argue that order flow trading is actually probably more effective in stocks than it is in futures. Now, on penny stocks is a kind of a different issue, because even though it might have a great deal of edge over there, you know, a penny stock can move so quickly against you that it just doesn't matter, right? I think that a penny stock that to really have an edge in penny stocks, that you really got to know something that everybody else doesn't. No, I think it's just because so in stocks you do have like market makers and so forth, right? But there's not like retail traders taking advantage of that stuff, right? And so there's this certain amount of edge that is untapped, that, you know, the large trading houses and so forth, that they don't necessarily care about, but the retail traders could take out, right? He doesn't want protesters to go full berserk. He wants to play the stability card. I really don't see how the stability card ends up being do nothing. I think that the French president's actions are further destabilizing the situation, because every time I've ever seen this play out, like for instance in the United States, as soon as the National Guard comes in, it's over. Right? Because the thing that started this, we're talking about the stuff going on in France, is that it's really common for there to be, even in the United States, for there to be small rebellions and social unrest, particularly among minority groups and economically disadvantaged groups, right? What's different in our modern day is that leadership will just stand by and watch it. Whereas in the past, they would crush them. In fact, probably overly harshly crush them. Oh, by the way, I'm just realizing now that we need to switch over the micros. Probably would be a good thing to do that before probably be a good thing to do that before we get to the PMI. Oh, you know what? I need to update my instruments. Anyways, that whole big cut, you gotta, the thing is I don't know if I can have that conversation and not say something that is, probably incorrect in there. So I apologize if I do. Like I said, it's, in some respects, it's kind of a difficult and intractable problem, right? But in other respects, I think that there are some things that are going on, some of the way that leaders are reacting to it and so forth, that are very obviously bad policies. Yeah? And I can leave it at that. But back to the thing that kind of got this started, I don't think that's why Twitter is having problems over the weekend. I think that Twitter is having problems because they fired too many site reliability engineers, and that the engineers at Twitter that were there before weren't actually that great. I don't think that they were actually... Oh, sorry. I thought it was you. It's Q. I think that the Twitter engineers weren't actually that great. Because if they were as great at their job as they're getting paid for, then their infrastructure should just be like tight, and they should be able to adjust their resources very easily, and they should be able to change their back end infrastructure very easily. New people should be able to come in and take over very easily. I don't think that's what's going on. I think that the Twitter back end was probably a mess. I mean, Twitter always kind of had like stability issues in the early days, and even though they did like re-architect some things and stuff like that, I thought that they probably did a pretty good job, but I think that the longer on it's coming, or the longer on this is going, the more I'm starting to think, no, they actually left a mess behind, and the people that are there now are not capable of dealing with it. Oh, why am I'm not going to Q. I'm so dumb. I'm so dumb, guys. We want July. We want in. These ones don't do quarterly expirations. That would have been bad to try and execute on that. Why do you keep those ladders up on the bottom? Because I believe that someday it will matter. Someday. Actually, I do find these other ones useful. So, being able to see the difference between how much the main treasury futures move compared to the interest rate futures is actually a really interesting and fascinating thing. And how much activity there is over here is also an interesting thing. Most of the time, there's not a lot of activity, but every once in a while, you will see somebody come in and start doing stuff in a particular instrument. It matters. So I believe that having these other instruments up down here is more valuable than the other things that I could put in its spot. And yes, I do believe that today is an early market close. Oh yeah, I was like, I feel like I got started on a subject and I had kind of stopped it. Okay, Vivek Ramaswamy. Okay, Vivek is going to be the Andrew Yang of the 2023-24 Republican debates. Is what I think. He's this guy that, really young politician, seems to have all of these new innovative solutions on how to deal with things, right? The problem is that he is politically naive. In terms of him ever becoming president, is that he's very politically naive. For instance, you can't come in and say, oh, well, all of these people shouldn't be able to vote unless they do national service or pass a test or something. I forget what his argument was, right? But he will take up positions that are like, oh, see, look, I'm unconventionally smart here. These are unconventional solutions that are really smart and stuff like that, right? The reason why the unconventional solutions are ignored is because they're politically toxic, right? So he does not stand. He has very, very low chance of being president, right? But like I said, he's the Andrew Yang, which means that he will end up kind of shifting the conversation, probably. Right? He will give certain minority ideas more play. Right? It'll shake up the race a little bit. Right? I also am not confident that he will fare very well in like a direct confrontation on the debate stage. So I guess it depends on what you think a decent showing is, but probably doesn't stand in any real. So I think the guy that's going to surprise you at the debates is going to be Tim Scott. So from everything that I've seen so far, you've got Trump and what's your name? DeSantis. You got Trump and DeSantis, and those are the only two real serious candidates up there, right? Then there are, I think that you could probably put Christie up there in that Christie has the chops to be a serious candidate. I don't think that he really has the support, but he has the chops to be a serious candidate, right? And then you have like a bunch of has-runs, right? There's a few of them that have had decent political careers, but really they're running to, try and increase their profile so that maybe they win next time around. But everything that they're showing so far kind of shows that they just don't have what it takes to campaign, right? Except for Tim Scott. Tim Scott is the one on there that, like, people don't really know a whole lot of, or think a whole lot about, that seems to be pretty good at this. In fact, I think that Tim Scott is a very, very likely vice presidential candidate. So if there's anybody that I think will surprise people at the debates, I think it'll be Tim Scott. Right. Some of these other people, like, the former governor of South Carolina, for instance, she seems like she's running to be vice president, and I cringe every time that I see her. Like, I thought that she would be a strong no. It's not. It's cringe. Cringe. Both Republican and Democrat candidates are running for president to pardon themselves. Loser goes to jail. If it ends up being Biden versus Trump again, I'm personally going to be very disappointed. I really don't want it to be Trump versus Biden again. That is just about the worst. Like I fear that says some really unsavory things about the way that American democracy is going right now, right? Trump is Trump and everything. There's good and there's bad, but I just don't think he's the person that we need anymore. I think that he was there for that moment. I think he was better than the alternatives. It didn't go as well as I had hoped. But the moment is past. And you need something different now. Is what I think. And if we've gotten to the point where people are so solidified in their ways that it just ends up being Trump versus Biden again, it's not a good thing. Because I really don't think that that's a path forward. I think your best chance is to get a different Republican. And yes, if Joe Biden does somehow end up being reelected, I will be very disappointed if the Republicans don't impeach him at some point, because it is starting to become very clear that he has been involved in impeachable stuff with his son. But we'll see what happens. I mean, can Ron DeSantis really step up? I don't know, man. Ron DeSantis has been running a pretty good campaign, actually. Like, his campaign infrastructure looks really strong. But since he announced, he's only become more unpopular. So that changes. So we shouldn't make too many hard conclusions until after Labor Day. But kind of seems like he doesn't actually have what it takes to beat him, to beat Trump. Or at least that's the conclusion that the conventional wisdom is making at this time. Why they don't like him, I'm not quite sure, but you know what? I don't think my feeds are updating. Because over here on my news squawk, I've got like... Here, I'll show you. Okay, so like my home feed is updating. Alan Dershowitz, for instance, just tweeted something, right? But I don't see any, for instance, this tweet from 4X Live should be showing up over in this column, and it's not. Well, the treasuries are making another little push up. Oh, it sent me to TweetDeck Preview. But TweetDeck Preview is showing me this stuff. Right, but it's not just limiting how much I can see in a day, it's limiting my ability to see live updates on my lists. I'm too afraid to go back to the normal Twitter, so I'm just going to leave it like that. University of Michigan Consumer Survey, 12-month ahead inflation expectations in June fell to 3.3%, the lowest level since before inflation surged in spring of 2021. Okay, that was 11 minutes ago. I'm also getting a report on my news squawk about an analyst talking about that we could move into a recession in the second half of the year. Oh, it was the S&P PMI data is what it was. Okay. Gotcha. 46 spot 3 versus an expected 46 spot 3. That's what that was movement on that, but kind of pretame. But we got the ISM manufacturing data coming in at the top of the hour, and that's the important one. Like that gives us the opportunity to possibly make some money, and then after that, Jake Capelli, why we don't like DeSantis, and then nothing was. Gordon, who's Gordon? Okay, so on the DeSantis thing, here's the thing that I think is weird about it. Okay, the thing that people are complaining about DeSantis are attacks from the left. Oh, do you mean Gary? You talking about Gary? I haven't watched his most recent video. That's interesting, I guess. I don't know what to say. I guess I can't really say anything without having watched the video, right? What are you expecting me to say? Yeah, you've watched the video. You've been here long enough to know. Why don't you tell me what I normally would have said if I had watched the video? You know? Moroccan technologies. Did they force you to change your name because they didn't like you using NASDAQ in the name? I'm interested in this next news event. Excuse me. I'm interested to see on this next news event how much liquidity pulls. Yep. Well, Moroccan Technologies kind of has a ring to it. What's this? Joe Weisenthal retweets Sean Tuffy. Yeah, charging for TweetDeck was always a layup and a perfect example of charging for a genuinely useful premium feature. I never understood why Twitter never did it. What, replying to the Stalwart? Oh, wait, what is this? Maybe I need to open it in a new tab. Oh, I would pay for a working TweetDeck, would even suffer the... I would too. I would too. Have you heard of SJ option? No, I've not. He would say he's really smart and we should work. No, that would not say that. I guess the thing with Gary is, I think he's got his thing. He's not really like putting new content out, So I'm not that interested in what he has to say about, some drama or something like that. Video on naysayers. Well, if there are naysayers out there about Gary, I'm going to bet that they actually probably have some legitimate points. So I think is often the case with these sorts of things. People have legitimate points and then they like get exaggerated, right? Except for when it comes to the narcissistic people, right? That's like, oh my gosh. When you're dealing with the narcissistic people, what happens is the naysayers will come out and we all think that it's just too fantastical to believe them. And so we ignore them to our own detriment. Because no, they're talking about Gary Norton. I think that it auto-corrected to something weird. So have you guys seen, so speaking of which, have you guys seen all of this drama with Miranda Sings? Oh my gosh. I am so shocked about that one because my kids liked watching that. Like my older daughter, stepdaughter, that was like her favorite YouTuber. And like, oh my gosh. Insane. I was like reading all of this stuff and I was like, this was going on in her shows. How come nobody said anything? So I don't think I would be so, as willing to let my kids watch that channel if I had known that that's what her live shows were like. And I always kind of knew that there was something off about her because she made that Netflix series and it seems like could be a family thing or like it was targeted towards kids. And then like the further along you get, like the more uncomfortable it gets. And it's like, no, I don't think this is for kids, which is kind of weird because why would you make that when your audience is young teenagers, And then all the stuff going on at her concerts and nobody said anything is just like, it's crazy. But I think she's kind of a narcissist. I think that like the character that she plays on YouTube is just an exaggeration of her true self. It's crazy. And it's just so wild to me that YouTube keeps enabling these narcissists, that social media keeps enabling these narcissists. That it's like these crazy, insane people that seem to do well, and the regular people that are just making genuinely good content get ignored. You read his manual? Yeah. So I have read his old manual, and there is actually some really good insights in there that I think most people will not realize the true value of. But it does kind of feel like it, for the amount of money that you would have spent to get it, that there wasn't a lot of content there. Yeah. Now his new course is kind of a different thing because there's like way more content. And hopefully with the more content that means that he's able to emphasize the things and help people understand why they're so significant and different from what most people know. But I haven't taken it. I already know that the free yellow course that he has is pretty good, and that, stuff that every futures trader should know. Some of these YouTube channels are really crushing it with the most ridiculous content. Yeah, it is. Well, so like, here's the thing. As far as I can tell, Miranda Sings doesn't like her audience. So she's basically out there to gain as much power as possible. And, so you find whatever kind of segment, and then you just go along with that, I guess. And I don't think that Miranda Sings intended to have a young audience. So what she did was they came out, she would see these kids on YouTube singing and thinking that they were going to become stars from singing. And she thought that was funny, so she decided to make fun of them, right? So really Miranda Sings is kind of she was brought up in a fundamentalist Christian household, and then I think she kind of rebelled against it, and that's the kind of person that she's trying to make fun of. But in the end, she just ended up attracting the kids that were kind of like that. Just kind of weird, right? So she doesn't, as far as I can tell, she doesn't like her audience, right? Now for me, I can kind of understand that to the extent that, like, I'll go on TikTok and I'll make a TikTok, and then sometimes that TikTok will just totally take off, and the kind of people that end up commenting on the thread are just like drive me crazy, and I'm like, no, this is not who I'm trying to. I guess I'm not going to make content like that again. And that's the thing is like I stopped making that stuff, and then because I know what kind of an audience I'm actually looking for, right? Well. Of course, I've kind of given up on TikTok in general, though. It seems to me that, one, TikTok does not care about its creators. TikTok views creators as just this TikTok views its creators as a renewable resource that they can abuse and do whatever they want to them, and just more people will come in and post. So they have absolutely no incentive to actually treat their creators well, or to allow their creators to make money off of their endeavors. They punish you for if people like click off and click your links and go off site. They punish you for having a business account, as far as I can tell, right? They also they are exhibiting a bias in their moderation policies. So I'll see. Oh, we gotta focus here. Hold on. Here we go. Okay, so all of these numbers are lower than expected, and are suggest deflation. Okay, so that's interesting. So I tried hitting 3.8 and it didn't let me. Yeah, for some reason I'm not getting anything in the 5 and the 1030 right now. But you could definitely see how the 2 had reacted to that. Still rejects me. No, it's never rejected me like that. And it's not Oh, you know what? Oh, damn. Okay. It's my fault. Fuck. Oh, I feel dumb. I would... Would I be taking it off here? So the reason it was rejecting my orders was because I had the quantity set to 0. Oh, that's so dumb. Oh well. I don't know if there's actually that great, because this could sweep back to where I had gotten in anyways, so yeah, that'll do it. Yeah. My bad. That's okay. So just to review on the numbers, US ISM manufacturing PMI 46 versus an expected 47.2, with manufacturing prices paid being 41.8 versus 44. That was the one that was making me go, oh, wow, okay, that's actually a little disinflationary looking. And US construction spending month over month, spot 9 versus an expected spot 5, with new orders, ISM new orders at 45.6 and employment at 48.1. Nah, it was nobody's fault. I don't know why it was 0 though. The other day I had this one up open and I was switching between 5 and 1 or something like that. That might have been, I might have changed this one and forgotten about it or not realized it or something. So $15. I do think I had a good hit there, though. 3.8. If it had actually filled. I mean, there is a possibility that my data was a little bit behind and that I wouldn't have actually hit at 3.8. But since it wouldn't let me do it, we don't get to know. I'm gonna try reloading this one real quick. Because, especially this one, because I'm a little surprised that there's not. Is there really no activity in the 30-year? 30-year micros? I guess it could be. It's a pretty 12K change in cumulative delta too, by the way. And what is the S&P 500 liking it? Well, the dollar is getting hammered by that, looks like. They seem to be rotating around 16 a little bit. So the thing I'm kind of watching now is how much does it pull back if it pulls back, because they've done 5 ticks here in the micros, but I'm kind of wondering if they come back to the 3.8. That's would be really common for them to do that. Well, it seems to be decent hits at 15. I think one of the issues here is that that does look like a data point that is relatively significant from a fundamental perspective, but it is still limited because it is only manufacturing, and manufacturing has looked bad for quite some time, right? And it's a Monday before a holiday, which is a really weird situation I haven't seen before. So I would expect traders to take profits very quickly. Like, I think I would have taken the 10 or 15 there, being concerned about it coming all the way back. So that's kind of why I'm wondering how much it comes back now. Because do they say, okay, yeah, we got to take our profits? Or is it significant enough of a number that they just told it there? So I guess we're about to find out. billionaire housewife? Why not trade micro? Why would I do micro? Wouldn't micro gold be like way more volatile? I don't know. I haven't pulled that one up. I don't think I've ever pulled up micro gold in fact. Federal Reserve takes seriously claims of retaliation against whistleblowers who report a possible violation of law or regulation by depository institutions. Okay, that's weird. They're tweeting that. Same risk, $1 per tick. Gold does move pretty decently these days, but I would say gold will still do things that from time to time that I don't know why. You know, there's some information over there in gold that I think would be necessary to trade it that I don't have. I need to go and find. You know, probably information specific to the gold industry. Oh man, the air conditioning turned on and I can feel the cold air coming up over the screen and onto me, and it's quite nice, quite nice. Well, so far, micros are at their lows over here, despite the 10-year having pulled back a decent clip. So that says to me that the micros maybe actually didn't go as far as they were supposed to. Also suggests that we're not going to see 3.8 again, but we'll see about that one. Okay. Despite the recent resurgence and upside surprises for U.S. macro data, the U.S. manufacturing sector remains deep in contraction based on the ISM and PMI surveys, driven by a sharp fall in new orders. For context, S&P Global's U.S. manufacturing is basically at December 2022 lows, which, absent the spike low during COVID lockdowns, is the worst descending print since Lehman. Under the hood of the ISM report, employment, new orders, and prices paid, a big miss, all tumbled into contraction. Chris Williamson, chief business economist at S&P Global Market Intelligence, said the health of the U.S. manufacturing sector took a sharp turn for the worse in June, adding to concerns over the economy potentially slipping into recession in the second half of the year. Leading the darkening picture was a severe drop in demand for goods, with new orders slumping at a rate among the steepest since the global financial crisis of 2009. Companies report that customers have become increasingly reticent to spend amid the rising cost of living, higher interest rates, growing concerns about the economic outlook, and a switch in spending to services. Exacerbating the downturn has been a continued focus on inventory reduction as manufacturers, their suppliers, and their customers all seek to cut warehouse stocks in the face of weakening demand. In this environment, pricing power is fading rapidly. Prices charged for inputs by suppliers are now falling at a rate not seen since 2009, barring only the early pandemic lockdown months. Prices charged for goods leaving the factory gate, meanwhile, barely rose in June amid increasing reports of discounting, indicating a total near collapse of inflationary pressures in the goods producing sector. The focus now turns to the service sector, where inflationary pressures have been more stubborn in recent months amid resurgent post-pandemic demand. The big question is how long this service sector spending can be sustained in the face of headwinds from the cost of living and higher interest rates. Okay, do you believe that trading is 90% psychology? No. So the reason that you see so many people out there spending so much time talking about psychology is because their strategies are based entirely on technicals, and the technicals that they are trying to trade are really just nonsense, and they're being fooled by randomness. And if you're really just trading a random line, that will eventually drive you crazy. And so, when you're doing something that's going to drive you crazy, then obviously the psychology is going to play a major factor behind, how well you think you're doing with it. Right? But if you actually have an edge, that it's kind of funny, because if you actually have an edge, the psychology becomes more important and less important. So if you actually have an edge, it becomes so much easier to trade. These head games are not such a thing if you really have a real definable edge. Right? So in that respect, the psychology is not as important, right? But if you really have an edge and you've mastered that edge, then the only thing that you can do to help your trading is to be your best all the time. And so the psychology ends up becoming the most important thing to you, right? Although I would say it's a little bit different psychology, right? Because you need to I think the psychology is a lot more about like getting enough rest, eating well, etc., so that your mind is always performing at its top. So yeah, but that's the long answer. The short answer is no. The psychology, all of the people that you see talking about psychology, they're only talking about that because they don't have edge, generally speaking. Wow, in Florida, your AC and irrigation system both broke at the same time. It's been crazy over there on the East Coast, man. All of the weather. We've had it pretty okay here in the Intermountain West. Well, not quite back to 3.8, but they are continuing to retrace that move. So going back to something earlier that Kulu was saying, I love those videos that rant about different trading styles, quote unquote. I am going to make a video about smart money concepts. But we're tackling volume profile first. I think I got some interesting stuff for volume profile. I finally recorded like the video part on Saturday. I was given some data that will allow me to do more years on it, so I'm going to be doing that. In fact, I might be doing that today, hopefully. I would love that. So remember earlier we were talking about like you can get an audience that you dislike, all right? But if my audience is hate watching me because they believe in smart money concepts, that would be great. That'd be great. But like, you know what? There is a possibility that my smart money concepts video could kind of create waves. Because basically, I have data that really strongly suggests that the only reason there was any success in it was because the idea became popular among retail traders. Because before it came popular among retail traders, like around 2020, the performance of the strategy is just noise before that. And then you get to 2020 and all of a sudden, you know, smart money concepts is a popular thing and people are making money from it. And then as soon as it like really exploded, like as soon as ICT became like a 100K YouTube channel, then the strategy started losing like every time, right? So I believe that the data really strongly suggests, I couldn't say that it proves it, but I think that the best theory that we have off of that data is that there's no edge in it, and that the only reason that there was quote unquote edge was because of how popular the strategy became. I think that says something really important about trading in general that will really make people think, and should make the smart money concepts people in particular really think, right? You follow astrology traders? There are really like people making content about that. That's funny. I mean, the thing is beyond that, I don't know what my next video will be. I have like a bunch of ideas of videos that I think could draw in viewers and stuff, but smart money is rebranded supply and demand mixed with price action. Well, price action is rebranded supply and demand. like seriously, the people that are trading price action, they're looking for supply and demand zones. Yeah. And really what that all comes down to is they're trying to rebrand technical analysis, right? It's technical analysis and they don't want to call it that. So they call it price action, and then they turn around and they say, well, technical analysis is using these lagging indicators so that they can disparage it. But the reality is that you're still talking about technical signals that are back testable, even though they might be beyond your ability to program them. And they are not beyond my ability to program. And when you come in and back test them, you find out that they don't work. I didn't trade this. I tried to, but I goofed up. It looks like it's coming back to my price though. So, given the situation, I would really like to try and sell at 3.8, but I would really rather not with what I got 40 minutes left in the day, for my trading session at least, and again it's a shortened trading day and all that, so we'll see. So I'm concerned that if I were to get in a trade at 3.8, that I might not even be able to get 10 points out of it for a while. Yeah, I would sell the yields. That would be buying it on the hopes that it comes back up there to the highs. Because I did think it was a fairly significant piece of news. But I don't know, we're kind of up through the day overall, and again, I really think there's like profit taking through all of this, so I don't know if at this point that it really strongly makes sense for me. Like if I really, really strongly believed that a strong second leg meta order coming off of this was going to come through here, then I would try and take the risk. But because of the shortened trading day and everything, I'm really skeptical that a meta order like that is going to come through. Could be wrong. What is your opinion of order flow trading? Everyone is using this word and they use the same wording for different things. Yeah, so I despise the term order flow trading. In my opinion, order flow is data and not a strategy. So order flow data is valuable, but a lot of people are just trying to apply technical analysis to order flow, and it doesn't work. There are some stylized behaviors that are exhibited within the order flow data, but they aren't visible using the kinds of methods that people are looking for. Because what people are looking for is like, okay, when I see this particular individual signal, then what happens next? Does it go up or does it go down? This is the fundamental problem with technical analysis, is that just because you detect the statistical aberration does not mean that it gives you a profitable strategy, and that you have anything predictive. Usually when you're seeing that kind of like statistical abnormality, what it means is that the trade is already done, right? That what you were really wanting to do is to predict that abnormality was going to happen before it happened, right? So I want to study the order flow data especially to confirm my expected order flows and to be able to learn what kind of order flows to expect, right? But I do not try and apply technical analysis to order flow, which is what most people out there on YouTube talking about this are doing, right? So the way that I address that is by saying, number one, order flow is data, not a strategy. Okay. What do you mean by supply? Okay, so first of all, I want to be clear that I'm making fun of these strategies. I don't think that they work. Okay. But the way that supply and demand works is, I don't know if I can even really give you an example. Sure. Actually, I think I can here. So the way that these guys would try and trade supply and demand is they would say like, and I can only do this because I can come in afterwards. Oh, come on, my pen is not working. You know, we have the benefit of hindsight right now, right? Come on. There we go. Okay. So what they would say is, it turned around here last time, so this is support. Ergo, next time it comes back there, it's going to bounce again. Or, okay, this time it didn't bounce, so I want to go long because it's actually a breakout. And they're trying to make decisions based on where they think supply and resistance are and the perceived price action around those critical points to determine if they want to go long or short, is essentially what they're doing. And the problem is that none of that predicts anything, right? And in particular, one of the setups that you'll see very often is they'll say like, oh, here's a high. Here's a high. If we break that high, so what they're actually, wait, I need to erase this and go back a little bit. So this is the setup that I'm going to talk about in the video I want to make, is that they'll say, okay, so there's our support level. There was a breach of that, and they call this a quote unquote liquidity grab. So if this comes back and actually goes lower than the structure from before the move, which would be this price right here, the pivot from before the move, right? So if it goes down here, then it will likely come back up to here somewhere and then move down. And so they want to go short somewhere over here. That's the setup that they want, right? And what actually happens very frequently is it will do this and then it will go even higher. But they think that this strategy works, and I have some back tests to show you that it doesn't. Right, but that's what they're talking about. Do they care about volume at all? Yeah, they'll say like, oh, you know, this bar had more volume. Like when they broke, there was real volume behind it, so that meant that it was like a genuine breakout, and all of these sorts of things, right? That's what they're getting on. So this comes back to auction theory, because you mentioned auction theory as well. Auction theory is wrong. Auction theory was a useful theory. It was, it had some good ideas, but ultimately auction theory is wrong. Because auction theory kind of suggests that when there is a change in the perceived fair value of an asset, that it will auction higher until until buyers and sellers agree on something, and then, or vice versa. And that's not actually how the market works at all. When the market is in balance, it's usually because nobody's really interested in trading it. When somebody has to come in and buy or sell a lot of something, it will tend to move it up or down, and that can create persistent trends because it takes a long time for those large orders to be executed. But those large orders don't tell you anything about the fundamental nature of markets. Them coming in and execute does not mean that they think that price is too low or vice versa. It could just be random portfolio rebalancing. So auction theory is fundamentally incorrect, and although it does kind of hit on some stylized behaviors of the markets that we have, and so when we go in to understand what is the driver behind those stylized behaviors, we get a framework that is much more effective at being able to make decisions, and doesn't, because I think that auction theory kind of will lead you to false conclusions sometimes, right? You'll see the move and you think, oh, well, that means that the market really thought that X thing was important, and that's not necessarily true. It will only break the level higher when you short. Yeah. Well, like I said, it appears to me that when that strategy became popular on YouTube, that like the market started trading against it, and that setup is not working very well. And I've seen that both in the back tests and also through people on like Reddit. Like you're seeing a lot of people on Reddit saying, "Oh, I'm trying to do smart money concepts. This is not working for me." What's wrong? Oh, the evidence that I have suggests that before the strategy became a popular thing, the performance was just random. It was literally like nobody cared about it. It's not like there was like some sort of edge. Like there's some things where it's like maybe there was an edge in it at one time, but that edge has kind of been taken out of the market. That does not appear to me what's going on with smart money concepts. What it looks like to me with smart money concepts is that there was never any edge in it at all. And the only reason why you're starting to see performance behind it now is because it got somewhat popular. And what we see is that a little bit of popularity actually helps a strategy. But once a strategy truly becomes popular, it's a terrible thing for it. How do you build a story then, or do you embrace market randomness? Okay, that's a good question. So you have to track them separately, right? So when I'm looking at what the market's doing here, that's not necessarily a reflection of the fundamentals. So what I have to do is I have to follow the fundamentals myself, and I have to follow the flows myself too. And then I can come in and I can say, okay, there was this flow. So like, I think today is a really, really good example. Right? We had ISM numbers that were pretty bad looking for the manufacturing sector, especially on the prices paid front, kind of suggests some deflationary pricing, right? So that's one thing that I think speaks strongly to where we are fundamentally. Doesn't tell us about the whole economy, but the manufacturing sector itself, it doesn't look very good, right? So we did see a pop on it, but it's coming back. So does that mean that those fundamentals didn't really matter, that the market, there was like, buy the rumors, sell the news, and then it's over, and that data point didn't actually matter. Well, the technical analysis, that's what the technical analysis people would tell you, is, well, because it retraced the move, it doesn't actually matter. But we have the context to say, well, okay, like it did matter from a fundamental perspective, but it's also the day before a holiday and they take profits and stuff. So like, right? This is kind of a situation where we kind of have to temper what we think about both the technicals and the fundamentals because of the situation. And we're only able to make those kinds of, that kind of analysis by actually knowing what's going on. And the problem that I have with the majority of retail trading is that it is essentially all based on trying to perform without knowing what's going on, right? Retail traders would rather try and follow a pattern on a chart rather than just trying to understand the economics. And what I'm trying to tell you is it's so much easier to do all of the research and just know what's going on than it is to try and play this game with technical analysis. Because there can be technical strategies that work out there, but they're extremely complicated and very difficult to find. And it is a much more difficult game. It's a much more difficult game. Didn't Rodgers say he moved to Singapore because the market here has changed so much, making the money has become more difficult? So that's true. That he is in the Singapore markets. But like that's where I was saying that like I think that you would have with pure order flow DOM trading, you'd probably have more success if you had it on stocks than on futures. But isn't auction theory just saying no? I don't. My understanding of auction theory is not that. Because what auction theory says is when there's a change in value, the market will auction higher until it finds the fair value. Right? That's the auction. Right? That's not what's actually going on. What's actually going on is somebody just has to buy a huge chunk and it keeps going up until they're done buying. And where they end up at has absolutely nothing to do with the fundamentals at all, and everything to do with the number of orders. And I'm basing that, and I talk about this in the video I'm making, I'm basing that off of statements from Mind Over Markets, the book by John Dalton. Right? That's what he says. He says, okay, they're auctioning up, they're searching for information. They're looking for a price where that price is too high and then it'll come back. Right? I would say that the order flow view of markets kind of says that what moves the market is the aggressiveness of buyers and sellers. But they're even more broad than that. It's what moves the markets is the orders, right? And the orders can come from a very wide array of different things. Some of those things are people trading based on a perceived change in fundamental value. But some of those flows have absolutely nothing to do with fundamentals at all. Some of those flows are, for all intents and purposes, random. Yeah. But what you can do is if you know what the flows are ahead of time, and you can predict some of those flows, every once in a while you get a situation where the imbalance between them is enough that you get a good trade. When you look at a market profile, okay, I'm not quite sure I understand what the thesis is in there. So my thesis is this: taking a trade based on where we are compared to yesterday's point of control is not a profitable strategy. That's my thesis, and that the basic idea behind auction theory is wrong and can lead to incorrect conclusions. right? Because the issue that I always come into with this is that people will always say, oh, well, of course, the more popular way of analyzing volume profile is wrong. But if you do it my way, I've been successful with it. And then my response would be, well, do you really actually have the data to back that assertion up? And chances are probably you don't. And so what I do in the video is I give you all of the tools to be able to empirically prove it, if it's actually a thing. By looking at a naked chart, you'll see a reaction in nearly every order block. Okay, so define reaction, right? So again, like really we want to get into the mode of, okay, I believe something about the markets. How can I empirically prove that thing about the markets, right? Well, there's a reaction. What is a reaction? How do you define a reaction? How do you quantitatively define a reaction to say this area tends to react more than other areas in a way that suggests that it's not just random, right? Then you might have something. But then on top of that, again, just because you have a stylized behavior doesn't mean that you have a successful strategy to take advantage of that, right? But that's what backtesting is for. That's when you can come in and you can say, okay, now what I can combine all these things together and I can say, okay, this is when I want to take the trade, and I can define that quantitatively and then backtest it and see how it performed. And everybody else can take that same algorithm and verify the results for themselves and run it on different data sets. Then you can actually prove a strategy, right? I mean, surely what I will say is an empirically proven behavior that we have is that when a large amount of liquidity gets taken out from a large amount of transactions, it actually tends to hamper price movement. That's something that we do know. But what is not proven is that there's any kind of usefulness based around a place that had happened a day ago or even 2 hours ago. As far as my research shows, once it's been 45 minutes, it doesn't matter anymore. Exactly, the market context might have changed. Right, well, and I'm arguing that the reason it does that, the reason that you will see distributions on the volume profile, although today it's a little bit random, the reason that you will see distributions on the volume profile is because of stylized behaviors in order flow that are created by the very rules of the game. That is to say that it is market microstructure that causes these things to happen. And what we know about the market microstructure says that once the liquidity is healed, that those behaviors are gone. And that takes about 45 minutes. So if it's an area that was important, but it's been more than 45 minutes ago, then the order flow conditions that were making that happen may no longer apply. But ultimately, it all comes down to, like, can we empirically express this stuff? Right. There you go. Price is the effect and not the cause of anything. Exactly. If I was a big trader, okay, if you just stepped in and gave me like $2 billion or something and said, Seth, I need you to buy X number of treasury contracts, right? and I come in and start executing it here on my Jigsaw account, right? Using like 100 lots and stuff like that, okay? It would have a certain effect on the market. And the way that I trade it would result in a certain price pattern. I would be able to come in and tell you, okay, here's price, and now I'm going to tell you I'm going to start executing here, and this is what it will do. And it will do that 3 legs because I'm planning on executing it in 3 legs, okay? I can predict what the market will do if I know the orders ahead of time. Because I'm the orders are what causes it to happen. The orders are what causes it to happen, not the price, right? And so that means if I'm coming along and I see this on a chart, does that mean that it's going to go higher? Not necessarily. It all depends on if somebody has a second leg of orders to execute. And you don't know that unless you know something about the fundamentals and how they execute and all of these other sorts of things that gives you a good idea that they will have enough orders that they will have to do it a second leg, right? Did you ever try Bookmap over Jigsaw? So I have not spent too much time with Bookmap. It seems like it's an okay platform. I don't think that its DOM is as good as Jigsaw's, so I use Jigsaw. And I frankly I prefer the community and developer and everything around Jigsaw more than I do Bookmap. Not that there's anything wrong with Bookmap. Guys will need to cover. Well, okay, so one of the setups that is common in order flow trading is they'll say people will need to cover. So for instance, we had to move up, we had to move down, and then we had to move up when we broke the high. And when that happened, this whole time, like maybe here, the cumulative delta was really high, and then it stayed down here. So that means you have all of these guys that went short here, and now they're underwater because price moved higher. And so this is considered this ideal setup where order flow, speaking order flow wise, these guys should have to cover, and so it should shoot higher because of that, right? The problem with that line of thinking is that the people that did that might be like 10,000, might be 10K contracts. And if there's somebody else out here that has a meta order to sell, right? Maybe this guy was the meta order selling, and so he's going to sell again, and it's actually going to make it go lower. That guy could be like 100K. And there's no way for you to know. And so what I have found time and time again is that these short-term traders that would be covering in a certain situation like that are insignificant in the larger scheme of things. I mean, all other things being equal, yeah, you should have a situation where they have to cover and you might be able to make a profit off of it. But these large meta orders lurking out there are so much bigger that when you actually backtest it all out and create a big strategy and everything, it's these guys, you can't even see them in the data set. They're too small to even matter. They're too small to even matter. So now, some way that I could do this, though, is I could do this, right? I could say, well, when you look at the commitment of traders report, you can see that there are a lot of shorts in the futures. And that is probably because of a basis trade. They're doing the basis trade in treasuries where they buy the treasury and sell the future and make money on the difference between them. Okay. That strategy tends to work pretty well unless there is like some sort of a recession where interest rates drop really quickly and then the basis widens and they have to puke, right? and I can quantifiably express the point at which they would be, the basis gets high enough that they would be forced to puke, right? And now you're talking about a position that is large enough, and part of that is, you know, why they're trading it, right? You know why they're trading it, and they're so large that it's causing like record levels in the commitment of traders, right? That's something that you could trade on. But just, you know, based on the price movement and like just watching the order flows themselves, it tends not to be very effective because it's just not big enough compared to the meta orders. And I breathed in, and I think I like breathed in a mosquito or a fly or something. But I have seen a little fly floating around here, and I haven't been able to get him yet. Biggest problem is their lack of understanding expansion. Well, so I have done a little bit of backtesting on that too, and I have found some interesting things with volatility expansion, which is to say that if volatility gets too tight, then you tend to see volatility explode. It's kind of hard to deal with that from an empirical perspective because, like, the market open is going to be an expansion in volatility always, right? So how do you factor that stuff in? But the bigger problem that I've found with that sort of thing is like, okay, like you will probably see volatility expand, but is it going to be up or down? Right? And so that strategy ends up not working very well unless you know something that really strongly suggests which way it's going to go, right? But that would be the stylized behavior of volatility, right? Volatility tends to cluster. And if volatility is too tight for too long, there tends to be an explosion of volatility. It's also a very fat-tailed trade, so you kind of have to be patient. Catch the big one. Joseph Wing, excess pandemic savings are better thought of a component of wealth which remains far above trend and with gains broadly distributed via real estate appreciation. This wealth effect continues to grow with asset prices supporting growth and inflation. Oh, I love it. This is probably another one of his. I'm kind of tempted to subscribe, but I'm not. I don't feel like it is worth $25 a month. If it had been $5 or $10, I might have gone for it. Clearly, I want to be in it, though, don't I? Hey, Greg, where have you been? All these traders desperate to find an edge, then trade's not working, so they have to go to psychology. Yeah. I know you're always there. I just haven't heard from you in a while. Yeah, well, you know, you guys, I feel like for the past few weeks, every stream we've had a bit of discussion about the market stuff that's been good. And it's kind of interesting to me because it's always talking about, you know, the same stuff, talking about how the order flow view of markets matches the empirical data better, you know, and what that is. And yet the discussion is always slightly different. And a lot of that comes from new people coming in and asking questions. A lot of the time it's been earlier in the session, though. So it's been good that today we've had it a little bit later in the session when more people are here. A lot of those kinds of questions these days have come in like the first hour of trading when not as many people are here because the mini's not open yet. So my pet peeve is traders blaming psychology and then blame me for being mad at blaming them for their psychology and lack of it. Yeah, well, it's just like this thing is like, you have a strategy. You come in and you say, okay, I'm going to try trading that strategy. And you trade it to the best of your ability. And then it doesn't work and you blow the account. And you say, oh, it was because I made this mistake and this mistake, rather than this strategy doesn't work, you know? I mean, I guess part of the problem that I see is that when it comes to economics, we want to treat economics like a religion, right? That seems to be the way that our monkey brains work, is that economics is a part of culture, and culture really ends up being the same thing as religion, right? Religion is just a broader extension of culture to include culture not related to the idea of whether there's a god or not, or which gods you worship, right? So people will become dogmatic about trading strategies. That's really what it comes down to. Is you know, can you imagine if people in physics took the same approach, right? Okay, well, I believe that the velocity of a falling object should follow this law. And then you go and you do it, and like it never comes out to the correct answer. Like maybe sometimes it does, but like most of the time it doesn't. Or like maybe it only works like 50% of the time. Only works 50% of the time, and then you say like you've solved physics, right? Like, but if it doesn't follow the data, right? Because in physics, you know, if I use the Newton's equations to predict how long it will take a ball to drop to the ground, I can predict it pretty darn accurately every time, right? Just as with order flow and the square root law of meta order impact, if I start executing an order, I can predict pretty effectively what it's actually going to do, because it's like a law, right? We need to take a scientific approach to trading rather than a religious and dogmatic approach to trading. Because when you take the dogmatic approach, then when you get data that's not in line with what you think, you say, well, it's just a coincidence, or you dismiss it, or you blame yourself. And so that's why you got all of these traders out there driving themselves crazy, because they think it's them that's the problem when it's their strategy. And they're always on tilt because they don't actually have an edge. That's why I always say, listen, if it's a technical strategy, right, there's always this problem with like where the rubber meets the road. You don't know if it still applies here or whatever, right? Okay. But in technical analysis, they're saying the market tends to behave this way, and it's all like very quantitative, right? How much data do you actually need to prove something though, right? 5 to 10 years. 5 years of data at a minimum. Okay. If I started trading a commodities trading pool, I have to show either 5 years worth of data or the data that I have if I haven't been around for 5 years, right? 5 years, that's the standard that the regulators set. There's a reason that they set it to 5 years, because just statistically speaking, that's how much data you need to have that. So when you're trading a technical strategy like that, do you have 5 to 10 years worth of data that suggests that strategy actually works? And if you don't, then the first question you should ask is, why don't I actually have that data? If this is all about these technical patterns, this tendency that the market tends to have, and it can all be very clearly defined entries and exits and everything, then why don't we have the data? Oh, well, it's because, you need to have these other things on top of it. Okay, so how do you know that it's the strategy, the technical stuff that you're talking about, and not the other things that you're throwing on top of it? Assuming that that's even, you can even show that that actually is profitable over a 5-year period. Right? The stuff that I'm talking about has empirical studies backing that basically show that these properties hold on every data set that you look at. Okay. Now, how do you turn that into a strategy? That's a different thing. And executing is a different thing. There's that place where that rubber meets the road, where you kind of do at some point have to just take the leap of faith. All right. But I think that's a much better situation than just putting faith in some guru on the internet that they're not just totally BSing you, right? But there's actually some information that says, oh yeah, that the market does actually tend to do this. Basically trading on, at least that the foundation that you're building on is something that's real, right? In my country, all prop firms have psychologists. Market is really immature and inefficient, so stupid strategies like front-running big players still work. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the difficulty is in anticipating what the big players will actually do far enough ahead in time to actually take advantage of it. But I really think that's the best way to make money. This is just me. Well, a lot of new traders really just don't know much of anything at all, but that's okay. Okay, well, it's time for me to get going. So I will see you guys on Wednesday, not tomorrow, but on Wednesday. In the meantime, stay excellent, team.